What's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? You're with Budgetmonk, and this is going to be a prelude to my World Conquest Holy Roman Empire extensive playthrough. I'm going to be talking a lot and ranting on in this video, and if that doesn't interest you, then just go ahead and continue on to the gameplay, in which we'll be following shortly after the uploading of this video. So basically the few topics that I wanted to discuss here was my choice of nation, which is going to be Austria, in an attempt to conquer the world. I think amongst a lot of more veteran EU4 players, my choice might be pretty typical and standard to pick Austria, but they have become considerably weaker in my opinion as time has gone on. They have been nerfed essentially, and also I find myself in a position where attempting to conquer the world actually is becoming more and more difficult as each patch comes out. With that being said, I just picked up the Cossacks myself, and I have played through a few campaigns, just sort of doing the early game in order to adjust to the changes. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Empire really quickly. So I have noticed that one of the harsh hits to the Empire in this particular patch is that I found previously that one of the easiest methods of actually obtaining imperial influence was by completing the missions to improve relations with particular electors, resulting in +5 to imperial authority. This has actually changed to where the reward is a 10% boost, I think over the period of 10 years, to your imperial authority gain. And although that might not seem that significant, I believe this is a huge hit to actually the amount of imperial influence that you're going to be obtaining. And it doesn't appear that way at first, but the reason I say that is because later on, once the Protestant Reformation actually happens, you're going to find yourself making very little, if anything at all, in regards to imperial authority. So 10% of very little, if anything at all, is obviously very superficial. Whereas gaining 5 in combination with adding provinces to the empire would allow you to actually potentially pass a imperial enactment. And so I think that is a huge detriment in this patch, but there has been also a adjustment, a change which I really do like, and that is the Shadow Kingdom, event, and how that can actually be resolved. In this most recent patch, if you actually have the designated areas, which of course are these 3 provinces and this area here of the Papal State, if you actually have that under your control, then you can actually just simply hit a button, a decision, to bring it within the empire. And the really significant thing about that is that they do not have to be cored provinces. So there's a few really significant things when taking that into consideration, and that is, one, previously you would have to obtain Roma and actually hold on to that for a long period of time in order to core the province up in order to bring it within the empire. There's a decision, or well, it is an event, but it allows you to decide between 2 decisions, where once you actually obtain Rome, you can either give it back to Rome and allow it to be a sort of city-state, or you can actually take it yourself remain in control of it, and that will give you, it will really hurt your relations with every Catholic in the entire game. Now that is on top of the fact that I am going to be playing on hard mode, and simply taking over this amount of land in a short period of time, which is all Catholic and near to the Empire, is going to produce a very large amount of aggressive expansion. It's kind of inevitable that you will probably have more than 50 aggressive expansion with many of these Italians, for instance. So one of the methods to actually weaken or prevent people from joining into a coalition against you is by having very high relations with them. But obviously, as the Emperor, our diplomats are going to be relatively preoccupied, to say the least. So having a relations hit with every Catholic is incredibly troublesome, on top of the fact that you will actually have a modified effect to have reduced reputation whilst in control of Rome. So basically, one of the issues I had with the Shadow Kingdom event when it was first created was that I felt it was kind of silly in regards to the fact that you could, let's say you attack Venice and you 100% them, and you do not have any kind of victory option to actually bring them into the Empire or to enforce your authority in some kind of way, which kind of doesn't really synergize with the actual script, the actual details within the event. So that was something that I didn't really like. I felt like it was trying to fit something that is kind of historically accurate, like different nations in particular, different culture groups actually disassociating themselves with the Empire and leaving entirely, but that just didn't really fit very well within the mechanics of the game, in my opinion. With that being said, as I think I stated a moment ago, I think the new decision where you simply need to hold on to the area, you need to own them, and you can just boom, bring them into the Empire, and then once the event pops where Rome wants Rome back, you can give it back to them and they will be within the Empire. I really like that change, and I think that it is a pretty good compromise on the situation, and overall I like how things have turned out. That's really cool. So with that being said, I also wanted to talk about the estates. Since I have been playing this game, which I think I started playing around Art of War when that expansion was launched, this game has become incredibly difficult to actually conquer the world in comparison. In fact, having so much time spent on this game and being so experienced, I think that if I went back to Art of War, it would actually be kind of laughably easy to conquer the world, and just a matter of patience and perseverance. Whereas now, I feel like it is so difficult that, assuming that you're trying to play the game legitimately without using exploits, and also in my case playing on hard mode, I feel like that achievement is so difficult that I have to pick the strongest nation I can possibly think of, and that is Austria. And I will elaborate a little bit more towards the end of this video and why I'm going to pick Austria and why I think they are the strongest nation. I was addressing estates though. I just wanted to talk about estates. In this most recent patch, the estates actually have the ability with the new function, the estates tab, to actually give you monarch points, monarch power. Now, of course, admin and diplo power, but in particular admin, is that's really great. That really benefits you in the long term, in my opinion, when it comes down to just simply having the enough admin to actually conquer the world. So I just wanted to throw it out there that that is a small buff, in my opinion, to actually make extremely difficult achievements like world conquest doable. But I have noticed an overall trend where the game becomes more and more and more difficult. And that is one reason that I want to do this now, while I think I can sort of stand a chance to obtain it, as that may not be the case in the future. Okay, so lastly, I just want to talk about why Austria is my choice. So let's talk quickly about balance. A lot of other people would obviously suggest the Ottomans. I think the Ottomans would probably be the most suggested for world conquest apart from Austria. And yeah, so again, if you're not interested in this kind of discussion, then I completely understand, but I'm just going to go ahead and explain my reasoning, my choice on Austria, and I'm going to do that quite extensively. So if you're not interested in listening to me talk, then I will see you later. For the rest of you remaining, I'm going to talk about balance. I think that the strongest European in the entire European region is Lithuania, but the Ottomans are certainly close, and when you consider how much core that they have, which is very easily obtainable, and I would basically consider Constantinople core, considering the aggressive expansion with Orthodox nations is trivial, and you can core it for free and stabilize it for free, and it even becomes more powerful in regards to development. So with that being said, I think that although they're not quite as strong as Lithuania, it is simply a short period of time before you can expand at very little cost compared to other strong nations like Muscovy, who can also expand, but it is at a large cost of admin. I'm going to talk about Muscovy as well as a valid option, but the huge attraction and the huge pull of the Ottomans is, of course, the negative 33 core creation cost. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the highest reduction in core creating cost in the whole game. And they also start with +5 discipline, which is huge. They also start with a unrealistically good ruler, and I believe their heir that they begin with, if I recall correctly, is also very strong. With that being said, another pull for playing as this nation is the location. They are in a very centralized location, I would suggest, and in particular this area right here. For some reason, I mean, it just spreads in almost every direction. And to give you a sort of example, if you were playing as Russia and the AI Ottomans was doing well, you would have to continuously plow through the Ottomans in this region and have a truce timer with them before you could sort of open up to South Africa, etc., as well as North Africa. The Ottomans having this area and in a time where they are owned by different nations really allows you to, it gives you so many options of battling on so many different fronts. Whereas again, if you take Muscovy for an example, they basically have north to go until that is being occupied, and then it's basically plowing into Europe or plowing into Asia. They don't really have many options apart from that. Yeah, so of course there are other things to consider, but their overall ideas are not actually that strong on the Ottomans. It is just simply the core creation cost, and tolerance of heathens, starting discipline, things like that are just absolutely great. And for that reason alone, with the core reduction cost, it is probably, in terms of idea groups, the Ottoman ideas are probably the best when looking at world conquest in the entire game. So again, the big pull is the location, the sheer strength, i.e. the core, etc., and the idea groups. And I think that if the Holy Roman Empire was not a concept and not a mechanic in this game, then the Ottomans would probably be the best choice, but I'm not sure about that. With that being said, another nation is Muscovy. And I really do think that Muscovy is comparable to the Ottomans. And the last thing I wanted to address about the Ottomans is the fact that they are Muslim, of course. And that means no personal unions. And that is the one thing that I think genuinely makes Muscovy comparable to the Ottomans in world conquest. And that is the fact that they are Orthodox and they can PU people. Not being able to PU people is a huge detriment, in my opinion. It makes the difference between subjugating, even if it's just one large nation. Not only is that an extremely effective way of quote-unquote conquering land, but it also can enable you to actually fight wars on behalf of them and to split the world amongst the two and to essentially save just copious amounts of admin, which is, of course, is one of the greatest limitations in actually conquering the world. So the strengths of Muscovy, of course, in regards to their ideas, the 15% reduction is very good, but it pales in comparison to the Ottomans. I think the Muscovy easily has the best ideas in the entire game when it comes to manpower and force limits. Having reduced infantry cost and having manpower recovery speed, 50% more force limits, and the ultimate idea of 50% more manpower on top of 25% more manpower. Means that they're basically any other nation, if they were in the exact same spot, let's say you own, all of Eastern Europe, any other nation like Poland in that circumstance is just simply not going to be as powerful. Of course, the Polish have good military ideas, but I'm talking in regards to manpower, manpower recovery rate, and the sheer amount of forces. And in my opinion, that is easily one of the significant things when it comes to trying to completely overwhelm and dominate everybody else in the world. So yeah, in conclusion, I think they have less options than the Ottomans in terms of expanding in different directions, although they're pretty good. Going into Asia and going into Europe simultaneously and splitting your aggressive expansion between two different religions is certainly pretty good. And of course the fact that they can colonize. I think really in regards to the colonial game, Muscovy is probably the best team in the entire world for that as well, because they're a nation that you can simply rush down the colonial ideas and you can benefit from that because of this, probably more than any other nation immediately you can benefit from that. But ultimately, as your coring range becomes just preposterous, even let's say you just have some of Scandinavia, you will find that you can probably start a colony, and within the next 100 years, from my experience, you can easily conquer the entire New World as Russia, playing catch up essentially. Yeah, so I think Muscovy is certainly a good choice, and the last reason I think they're a good choice is because you don't have to deal with Russia yourself if you are playing as Russia. And I hope you guys understand the concept of that. Essentially, Muscovy is stronger in terms of development than all the other nations around it, apart from Lithuania, which is usually shackled by Poland. But then when you consider their 3 vassals as well, it means that 9 times out of 10 they're going to prevail out here in the east. And They simply have so much land to conquer. One of their biggest limitations is their admin. You will notice the consistent trend in their AI where they will just become a huge juggernaut and they won't slow down because of the as the time goes later, they will just conquer more of the hordes at a faster rate, and because of the colonial activities, you will find they're not that intimidating in the early game because they become completely sort of bastardized by overextending so hard and having such low admin technology. However, there is a catch-up mechanic, obviously, in this game, and when it gets to the later stages of the game, you're going to find yourself with a huge juggernaut out here, which of course is going to be much more difficult to handle than separate entities. So that's just one thing to consider, is if you are playing as Russia, then you don't have to deal with Russia in the late game. And the same thing, in my opinion, is kind of applicable to the colonial powers. One of the strengths of playing as the colonial powers would be that you can essentially colonize the world and undermine the other colonial powers earlier on. So when it comes to Austria, there is pretty much one reason I think Austria is the best, and it comes down to my observations of watching other people play the Ottomans and my own experience, which I have a lot of playing Russia. At the end of the day, you can become so powerful as Russia. I have myself owned like all of Eastern Europe and all of Asia and literally the entire New World, and had a strong personal union over Austria, for example. And it comes down to just looking at the world like statistics, and it just looks undoable. And in terms of the amount of land that needs to be incorporated, it just seems undoable. And with that being said, I think the Empire, not only is this the most amount of land that can possibly be inherited by a mechanic within this game, but it is also going to result in the sort of strongest nation. I don't think that any other nation can compare to the might of this within such a short period of time. I hope you guys can comprehend what I'm saying. My point is that if you do a Holy Roman Empire run, I think that you will be the strongest nation in that period of time once you are near to completing the empire, when compared to any other nation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they are the best in terms of conquering the world, because like I said, you're essentially just taking land which you would otherwise take quite easily. You would just be limited by your admin. My point is that I think they're the strongest. I just don't know if they're the strategically best nation. But the reason that I think they are, or else I wouldn't be picking them, is because I believe the Empire can be exploited to some degree even still. And I don't think exploited is the right term to use in reference to this game, EU4, in this community, because of the massive amount of exploitation that does happen. But the reason I use the term exploited is, I will give you an example of what I mean. Let's say you're playing as Austria and you get the Burgundian inheritance, and France owns all of this area here, but you own this region here. You might find yourself able to release Burgundy as a vassal, perhaps after releasing Luxembourg and Hainaut, in order to create more states within the empire. But that will allow you to actually reconquest on behalf of your vassal Burgundy, and ultimately when you hit that button, this is going to be instantly incorporated at zero cost. And not only can you reconquest, but of course France might be a valid rival, for instance, and therefore, because Burgundy is a French nation, you will find that they most likely are going to claim up a lot of this land, and therefore they're a nation that you can feed as a vassal, who, because of their claims, you will probably find that it's not even going to require diplo points or admin points, and it is essentially free land. But the limitations of this are almost endless. I mean, let me give you another example. If you conquer Holstein in order at some point to bring Holstein within the empire from Denmark to increase the amount of imperial authority that you gain, well, let's say that you take this province here and you return this to Holstein. Of course, the emperor has coring range within the entire empire, so you own this nice little province here. Well, let's say after wrecking Denmark, taking his vassal essentially, that Sweden overcomes him. This is just theoretical, which is pretty likely, I think, from my experience. Let's say towards the mid-game, Denmark has been completely eradicated, or alternatively Scandinavia has been formed. Well, then this will allow you again to release Denmark as a vassal, who will now be in the empire, because you will bring the capital city of him, his only city, into the empire, and then you will be able to feed all of this back to him, and you may even, let's say Scandinavia or Sweden is a valid rival, he may have claimed up a lot of this land, so you will feed him further. And of course you could always feed him further, but the statement I make about the claims means it's not going to cost diplo or admin, which is very good. Now the same thing can be applied to the Teutonic Order. Let's say Poland or the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth owns this land. Again, not untypical. Let's say they're a valid rival. You take a province like Danzig. Once the Teutonic Order has been completely eliminated, release them as a vassal, reconquest all this land. And the same, I mean, it is almost endless, like I said. Let's say that you are coming down into southern Italy, which I think is pretty typical. You're in the Balkan region. The same could be applied to so many nations like Byzantium. Take one province, just one province, core it up, and essentially release Byzantium, feed them into the entire Balkan region, maybe even into Turkey, if the Ottomans remain a valid rival, and boom. What it's ultimately going to result in is bringing all just huge amounts of land into the empire with a click of a button. And of course, by that I mean the last Reformation forming the empire. So that is my choice, and that is the thought process and the reasoning why. And the last thing I want to address is sort of the style in which I'll be playing the game. I will be playing on hard mode, like I said, so my first priority is going to be making sure that I am going to be elected and so on. I won't be able to do anything more, I am sure, than focus on keeping the Italians within the empire. So that will be my first focus, and I think from there I'm really going to try and probably have France as a vassal, as an ally, and probably try to utilize them against the Iberian nations. So I'm hoping to probably continue into Italy and through the Italian islands into the Iberian Peninsula to sort of shut down these nations. I think that's going to be one of my more prioritized locations, simply because of the sheer amount that they actually colonize and how tedious it is to actually deal with the New World once these colonial nations like Brazil and the Caribbean just become established. They're really quite powerful if you don't have a navy. With that being said, I would probably focus, like I said, to take strategic locations, and of course I want to be taking as much land as possible from nations that aren't going to hinder my reputation and therefore not have me elected. So i.e. this region, most likely from the Ottomans, I'm going to focus really hard to expand into here and bring as much land as I can into the empire to actually boost my imperial authority. That's pretty much going to be my strategy in a nutshell, and I think that with the more recent changes, like I said earlier, I think that it is pretty much impossible to actually, well, I should never say impossible, but I just mean unrealistic to bring to kind of resolve the empire and have it all locked down and secure before the Protestant Reformation is in full force. I really feel like that's unrealistic. So what is most likely is going to happen is I'm going to be focusing on the empire thoroughly, like keeping Italy in, and then mostly I'm going to be essentially pretending that I'm just Austria, if that makes sense, and focus on my efforts, like I said, in the Iberian Peninsula and into Asia. And then I might even flip Protestant. And lose the emperorship, and then essentially lead the Protestant League against the emperor. That is something that I may very well do. And then, of course, in the sort of late game, or the medium to late game, I will be focusing extensively on the empire again, whilst hopefully managing all sorts of things, if that makes sense. So I hope you guys enjoy this sort of discussion. This is sort of a experimental video. I don't blame any of you if you have absolutely no interest in watching this and listening to me talk on and on and on. But thank you for watching if you did make it this far, and give me your feedback if there's anything that you think I have missed or I should consider, and I would really appreciate that. Lastly, I had something to say, if I can actually retain what it was. No, I can't. So, thanks for watching, guys. Oh yes, I'm glad I remembered. Yes, I do know what it was. It is just been past the new year, guys. It is technically 2016, and I'm thinking within a month, or, well, yeah, within a month, I would say February, I'm going to be trying to actually move out, and at that point, I'm going to be streaming full-time, essentially, as well as working. So, one thing I wanted to do when I actually launch the stream, like when I am back to streaming, I would actually like to stream this World Conquest live. So what I'm going to be doing here in this YouTube episode series is actually, this is going to be sort of an extensive Holy Roman Empire playthrough, and a sort of let's play or look at, and let's see if there's anything else that I sort of encounter and learn from this experience. But what I'm hoping to achieve is to actually reach the last Reformation, and then I'm probably gonna call the series quits, as they say, and be content with that. And I'm hoping that if I am in actually a good position, that then I will use this save file to actually conquer the world in sort of a launch party, if you will, when I get back to streaming, and probably stream for like 24 hours or something like that. So that was probably the most important thing, which I ranted on and on and on and almost completely forgot to say. But yeah, that's it. This has been Budgetmonk. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy what's to come. I'll see you there.